Hello everybody, I hope you can all hear me. My name's Hero Brown. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief at Muddy Stilettos. Sitting very regally in the back, if anybody wants to come and see us, on the right-hand side, we do school reviews, we're a big lifestyle site, and the reason I'm sitting here is we have our own schools guide and our own schools award. So we do a lot of work with schools, and we review a lot of them. And this particular talk is about relocation. We sit outside London, which is why I've been asked to do this. But I've got some fantastic panellists with me here today who I'd love to introduce you to. Ceri Jones, who's the headmaster of Caterham School. Andy Nuttall, who is the headmaster of the Downs, Malvern. And Catherine Hutton, who's the director of Hutton, Bubear? So property agent and can find that perfect house if you're planning your move. So we hope we'll kind of cover quite a lot of your questions. It's a big consideration, isn't it, moving out of London perhaps, or even relocating to a different part of the country. So we'll open the floor, let you know at the end if there's anyone got any questions for the panelists. But I suppose one of the big questions for those who are with children who are at London schools. One of the criticisms of London schools, you can tell me if this is correct or not, is that it's very academically focused. There's a lot of pressure on students sometimes. And I suppose the question is it correct to say maybe outside of the M25, there's a little bit less pressure on the children?
Shall I start? Okay. So, hi everyone. So, Ceri Jones at Caterham School. We're actually inside the M25, just
about.
As a point of reference. We're about half an hour away. It's a really good question. I think perhaps slightly unfair on some of the London day schools in terms of the pressure piece. I think I'd say three things about that. I think from a purely numbers perspective, in terms of the application process, it may well be that. Can you hear me? Is that okay? The volume of applicants to London day schools adds a pressure perhaps to the application process you may not find a little bit further out, just from a purely volume of numbers perspective. I think perhaps geography does matter a little bit in terms of the facilities a school's able to offer. So Caterham, although we're inside the M25, we have a 200-acre site, we have lots of playing fields, we have a woodland, we have a climbing wall, we have all kinds of things that if you're not out where we are and you're stuck in the middle of London, you might not be able to offer. So there's perhaps a piece of breadth there that we are able to offer that perhaps a London day school can't. But I think the most important thing, actually, Hero, is about school culture, actually, what the school is trying to do. I think most of the heads I know, in most of the schools I know, including London day schools, believe in breadth, believe that education is about more than just results. Their ability to deliver that will depend on the facilities for sure. But I also think that sort of dichotomy between being academic and in London and perhaps not academic and outside of London is also a false one. A school like Caterham, academically, is super strong. Our results are incredibly strong. Destinations for pupils are amazingly strong as well. But we also have a school culture which believes that success and achievement doesn't have to come from just being a high-pressured environment. That the way you get the best out of young people, the way you get the best out of colleagues, is to create a school environment which is nurturing, caring, about the individual being their true, authentic self, about allowing people to get things wrong and learn from those things. You can choose your school culture, which is less about geography and more about the philosophy and purpose of a school and what you think education should be about. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of a generalisation to say London day schools are too intense because they're in London and that we're perhaps less ambitious because we're outside of London. There's a whole range of schools. It comes down to purpose.
Yes, understood. So it's more about the culture, isn't it? It's not about. We're not saying that there's less academically able outside London, which would be ridiculous. But it's kind of about the culture that you kind of present. What do you think about that, Andy?
Thank you. So Andy Nuttall, I'm headmaster at the Downs, Malvern. So we're a prep school. I echo much of what Ceri said. Outside, we are obviously much further outside the M25, albeit connected by direct train line to London. So we do have that space. We're unashamedly academic because we're a school. That's what we do. That's the raison d'etre. We want our children to learn knowledge and skills that they can take on throughout their lives and succeed in whichever senior school they go to. I have recently relocated from the southeast to the Herefordshire-Worcestershire border. For children at our age, there is definitely less pressure because there isn't the need to sit pre-tests at such a young age. And as soon as children have to do that, of course, there is natural pressure there because the children are having to test. Ours is over on the western side of England. I was quite relieved to find it hasn't in some ways caught up. I'm sure it'll come at some stage, but it's far more organic in approach. But at the same time, yes, we're highly aspirational for our children. The majority of ours, vast majority, go on to Malvern College where they get extraordinarily fantastic A11 IB results. And it's because it's a natural progression, but we have all of the benefits of the space and the rounded education, and we're not focusing so much on what they're doing, their pre-test preparation. It can be far more natural and organic, and we can give them that huge breadth of skills that supports their academic learning, because if they're going to excel on the sports pitch, the drama, in the drama studio, in music, they're going to do well in the classroom as well. So at my age group, I have seen a far less pressure for those young children, which I think is a good thing, again, because we get those late developers who really benefit from having a bit more time before they're assessed for their senior school entry. They will still get there. They'll get into many of these fantastic schools, and rightly so. But the children have a little bit more time to be a child, in my experience.
That's a good answer. So I guess if you're thinking of moving, you know, as parents, do we think, oh my God, do we think about the location? Do we think about the school? Are we thinking about the house? It's kind of it's a conundrum, right? And you are the best person to ask this to, Catherine. So tell us, what's the answer?
After sort of years of sort of going backwards and forwards and tried and testing, we think the right answer is school first, and then try and draw a 25-minute circumference around the school to try and work out, you know, where you want to be. It's much easier to find the right school, or much harder to find the right school, and easier to find a good home around it than vice versa.
Do you guys have any experience of this? Do you advise as kind of like, you know, impromptu property agent?
I guess no, not so much. I mean, I've got experience as a parent myself of doing this, of moving out of London and looking for a school first. So we moved out to Kent. My children now are ridiculously old. We go so quickly. But we moved out and we chose school first and then house. And I think you're absolutely right that you know, looking for the right educational setting for your child is probably the single most important thing that you will do as parents. You know, finding the right school for them matters. And absolutely right that within that, I'd say perhaps 45 minutes rather than 25 minutes. A circle around a house, around a school, would be the way that I would do it. And that's what I advise parents to do as well.
So what about with the lockdown trend? You know, how many of you know people who actually up sticks and moved from London so quite a few of you. So in that pandemic panic, wasn't it like, oh my God, out of London? And how did you find that? You know, what was your experience of lockdown and the kind of numbers sort of hitting your school? Is that still happening? You're still finding lots of Londoners coming out?
Very, very much so. Yes, certainly accelerated by lockdown and COVID, but every day we are seeing families moving to Herefordshire, Worcestershire, simply because they want that quality of life. They get to a certain stage, they don't want their children in the pollution, with all the other pressures that come with living in an urban environment, and they themselves want the freedom.
It's nice and relaxed out there, isn't it? I mean,
it's as relaxed as you want it to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing to say. You know, I will hold my hand up. I'm unashamedly a country mouse. I did come to university in London, absolutely loved it. But, you know, if you want the bright lights of Birmingham or London, it is jump on a train line. Yet, I know that the families that I was speaking to, someone yesterday morning just came to our toddler group, just relocating back, and I said, right, I'm speaking tomorrow. You're exactly the type of person. What is it that has made you come back? And what do you find yourselves doing? And she said, we just have great quality time in the natural outdoors with our children. But if I want to go to the Ivy in Birmingham, I can. You know, so you've got the balance, and you've got the best of both worlds. And she was reflecting on the fact that, you know, the trend and the expense of the properties, Herefordshire and Worcestershire, at the moment, a bit of a secret gem, and I'm sure it is further away from London. It's that connectivity and the affordability that, for us at the moment, is we're seeing that trend continuing, very much so.
And what about you, Catherine?
I mean, we had, not surprisingly, our busiest couple of years during lockdown, where we had people coming out from London in, almost the bus loads, and we had waiting lists, and we had people just absolutely desperate for more space and for some time. Understandably, everyone was working from home. It was a really difficult time for a lot of people, and the country did seem to have some space and some nice fresh air and a good experience. We have seen those numbers, and with that, it pushed some house prices to, one would say, some quite silly levels in the country. We have people, 7, 8, 9 families battling for one house. The prices were going through the roof. We were advising clients not to go for houses. They were going to overpay and walk away, and we were really trying to advise them not to make any silly mistakes. Luckily, though that has calmed down. Hampshire, Surrey, places where there are really good transport links, really good schools, nice villages, the prices are still quite full, I would say, but areas where people are now realizing that they're not going to be at home 5 days a week, people are having to go back to the office a couple of days. So, in terms of going to extreme levels of going to Herefordshire, some people have realized that actually staying a little bit closer where there are good schools is a more robust investment.
I'd say, probably it's not so extreme to go to Herefordshire, maybe more extreme to go down to Cornwall, where it's kind of a sort of bigger, but actually for you, probably it's a good halfway house, isn't it?
I was going to say just that, actually, and we're beginning to see that trend of people being asked back to the office, actually, rather than moving out. Caterham and schools like Caterham are a great halfway house. So we are literally, 40 minutes south of where we're sitting right now. And we have lots of families who live in this part of the world coming out to us, either as day pupils or as kind of weekly or half-weekly boarders, because some families increasingly now want to stay put where they are, but have the benefit of a school like Caterham not that far away. And a 45-minute commute south is no different to a 45-minute commute across London to a school from wherever you might be. So, we're finding lots more families now staying put in this part of the world and coming out to us as a day pupil.
I think one of the things when you're relocating, or if you're in London and you're thinking, okay, or maybe could I go and live in, Herefordshire, or, how's that going to fit? There is that kind of idea. It's like, oh shit, am I going to actually fit in here? And I kind of taught that from experience, because that's why I started Muddy Stiletto. So I was living in Islington. I moved out to the Buckinghamshire countryside and kind of just went, shit, where's the fun? And I found the fun, and that's why I started Muddy Stilettos, as a way to kind of, find the good bits of it. So I'm kind of asking this in a sort of half joking but half serious way. How do Londoners fit into a culture of a school that is, outside London? Because they're urbane, you're super cool urbane, movers and shakers, right? You want to kind of still feel like you're doing it.
But there are pockets of countryside that have got some really lovely villages like Farnham, Guildford, or towns rather, where you can pop in and do that. It's a different kind of fun in the country. It's not, and I think finding like-minded people and being in a like-minded area is so important. Do your homework, especially when it comes to the school. Are the kind of parents that you're going to identify with? Can you imagine living there? And it's when the time is right. I always say to clients, when it's time to up sticks. And I was there 8 years ago when we moved out of Wandsworth to Hampshire. We did a well-trodden path. The first year is really tough. It's really dark, it's really cold, but actually after that you suddenly start seeing the real benefits of being out in the country, and you see your children sort of running into the garden and village life, and I'd say a good village is really, really key if you're not sure about whether it's going to work, and not being down at the end of a track on your own. Don't go to extreme levels.
Well, I suppose the other thing to point out as well is it doesn't necessarily have to be deepest, darkest countryside. I mean, you've got city after city after city. I'm just thinking in my patch, which is Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire, you've got Oxford. I mean, it's an amazing city, and you've got beautiful villages that surround that, don't you?
I mean, I'm not paid by the Malvern Hills board, AONB, but, you do have towns and cities that have got everything actually you need, but the countryside is right on your doorstep. I'm going to borrow the tagline, it's a different type of fun in the countryside. I can see that all over a poster. I mean, it is, but actually it is, why are you doing this? Hopefully it's for yourself and your work-life balance, but it's also for your children. And I think that's what I see, is the children get the benefit, of living in the outdoors, experiencing things they've never experienced before. I've got a queue of children wanting to muck out the pigs on a Saturday during our hobbies, because that's the type of thing they want to do. Children this morning mountain biking across the Malvern Hills with a professional coach. It's these opportunities they get. You might find, you may have to get out your comfort zone and find a new hobby occasionally, yes, but the opportunities are there. And as I say, if you choose wisely and do your research on what are you as an individual and as a family looking for, you can get the balance right, and it could be quite exciting.
I mean, just to finish off this bit of the conversation, I guess my experience of parents are parents, and crucially, the parents I know in all the schools I've worked at, wherever you are in the country, your ambition for your children and your expectations of schools and what they need to deliver for your children are pretty much the same, actually. So it may well be that you can have lots more fun or different kind of fun in the countryside, but as parents, my experience is, and I would hope, all of us want to do the best possible job we can with your children, no matter where we are, whether it's London or Herefordshire or goodness knows where. And so the level of expectation, I think, of parents on schools actually isn't that different, no matter where you are in the country, and nor would I want it to be, actually, either.
Just to loop back a little bit about location, we sort of established that actually the school is the thing to find first, which is quite interesting, isn't it? And then, but actually, how far from a school could you be? Be an interesting one for you, Catherine, because I guess, well, obviously, the further away you are, the more options you've got.
And I am a school mum, so I do the school run every day. We're 25 minutes from school, and I would say, that's an hour pretty much there in the morning, that's an hour pretty much there in the evening. It's country lanes, it's not, So I would, and then heaven forbid you forget swimming stuff or something happens, and then suddenly you're doing it all over again. So I really feel strongly that 25 minutes to school is the maximum you should be doing. Also, if they make friends 25 minutes the other side, suddenly you're doing play dates and birthday parties and all that sort of thing, miles and miles away. So I think you've got to draw a line somewhere, and that personally is where I feel the boundary is.
Although I was going to say, as a school, you can, you've got great bus routes, right? So
yeah. I was going to answer this question both as a school but also as a parent, actually. So from a school's perspective, yes. Our catchment at Caterham is about 45 minutes, broadly speaking, and we're drawing pupils down from this part of the world, from West Kent, from Brighton, from all over the place. And we have a really extensive bus network, so it's not, just because you might be 45 minutes away doesn't mean that you're doing all the driving. Most schools have really great now bus networks where your child gets on a bus in the morning and it's a school bus, our bus, that brings them to school and brings them home in the evening as well. And sufficient flexibility around those bus routes to make sure they can stay after school and do stuff as well. I think part of the question is also that as you move from primary to secondary, and I speak now as a dad, just that commute, their social network becomes, you can't control it, it becomes huge, and as a dad, I remember my children going from primary school to secondary school, and suddenly your Saturday night pickups are 45 minutes away, an hour away, because that's just life. That's what happens. So I think don't limit yourself necessarily to 25 minutes, forgive me. I think, most schools now have really good ways of making life easier for you as parents to get your child there, and lots of mitigations if they do forget their swimming kit to make sure it's not a complete disaster.
One of the things we've not talked about yet, but I'm sure is, extremely important to you as Londoners, a very diverse community, important to us all in the UK, but actually how you as schools handle diversity and, integrate with sensitivity. Can you talk a little bit about that, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that, the further you get from London or the further you get from any urban area, that the less diversity there is naturally. I mean, I would say as a school, that's certainly improving in the time that I've seen. We are, I can speak from personal experience, we're a rural school with a global outlook. because we're a boarding school, of course, we are able to attract greater diversity because we have children from overseas, we have children from national areas. I caught the end of the last talk, and I'm not sure how many people were here. I believe it was about diversity in the independent school landscape. You know, we make sure that we have aspirational speakers of all types coming to speak to the children, so that even if they are a traditionally white, Caucasian, Herefordshire child, they will still get the important influences from everybody of all races, genders, cultures, etc., so that they are well informed. I think that's fair to say. And the children that we do have from the diverse backgrounds that we have, they don't experience any negative stereotyping whatsoever. The children are children, and they just get on with it. They're fantastic.
As you say here, I think this is a really important question, and I get asked this a lot by prospective parents about Caterham. So I've been there 8 years now, and we are intentionally now much more diverse than we were in every respect. So yes, in terms of ethnicity, and a sort of 40% of our kids now are sort of non-white backgrounds, but also in terms of socioeconomic background, you know, a much more diverse people intake there. In terms of neurodiversity as well. So we've worked really hard to create an intentionally diverse school community. And I think for two reasons. I mean, most importantly, it means that pupils can be their true, authentic self. They haven't got to conform to a particular type. They can be them, which is really important. But also from a learning opportunity, having different perspectives, different viewpoints in the classroom makes a huge difference to that learning opportunity. Like lots of schools, we are painfully aware that our pupil body and our families are changing very quickly. Our teaching body isn't. You know, we're working very, very hard to recruit a more diverse teaching body. That's going to take a bit of time. We've worked very hard to create a much more diverse governing body of the school. We also have, and I think we're one of the only schools in the country to do this, we have a shadow board. We've appointed, below our full board, a board of 18 to 30-year-old recent leavers who are very diverse in their worldview too, so that when we're talking about big issues, we have their perspectives in the room too. So we are aware of the opportunity and the challenges around diversity, and making good progress. But I think it's a really, really important question.
Another thing we sort of started talking about, but probably of interest to you, if you're kind of moving out of London, you're relocating, but you actually happen to still be commuting, you know, you've got quite a commute on your hands into London, for example. As you say, more and more people are, you know, being called back into the office. How do you respond to that? Have you know, can you talk a little bit about your wraparound care or extended days or flexi boarding and things that, you know, that you know, you're sort of thinking through for the client?
We're very fortunate. We've got a full boarding community, so it's very simple for us. Day pupils can come in for breakfast and they can go home after supper if necessary, and we can be as flexible as possible. So if it's a last-minute meeting, you just let the school know, we let the child know, really sorry, Mum or Dad can't make it to pick up. You're staying for supper. They're just absorbed into the boarding community, and that's it. We have the flexible boarding options, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 nights a week. We've got our core full boarders, so at the Downs, it's just very straightforward, and we've got that flexibility, and we've got the provision. So the parents know, with confidence, they can drop them off for breakfast, they can pick them up later. The children are very happy, because many have tasted boarding already. We have the tasting boarding experiences. So from the boarding school perspective, it's just pretty seamless, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that's changed a lot in the 30 years I've been in education. We can see that schools have become much more customer focused. You know, our job is to make, we understand that life is complex, life is complicated, life is busy, and most of us are parents too. So I think all of us work very, very hard to make school as accessible to you and your children as possible, whether that's through wraparound care, whether that's through different forms of boarding, whether it's full or weekly, or we have half-weekly boarding at our school where you can come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we create structures and processes which acknowledge that life kind of comes at you fast and it can sometimes be unpredictable. And most of us now do that, which is a big change, I think, over the last 30 years.
Catherine, what do you find? Are you being asked about this quite a lot? What are the main things that people are asking you?
Well, I am, but also I experience it from the parent side too. So, you know, quite often if I'm out with clients and it's suddenly like a 6 o'clock pickup rather than a 5:30 pick up, and there's always the prep school that my children are at, who are actually here today, are very supportive and very good with two working parents, and that's really key, I think, for commuting parents, but also parents that work. And I think the prep school that my children are at, it's a large, high number of two working parents, which is one of the reasons we were really attracted to it. That they're very used to this sort of style of wraparound care.
Fabulous. Thank you all for your really interesting answers. Has anybody got any questions? Yes. Oh, we've got a microphone winging its way to you.
Just a question. You mentioned Farnham and Guildford in Surrey. What are the other areas that are like hotspots for moving out of London that have the good school? And as you said, we're thinking of relocating. We're in our 30s. We want a fun place. What are the areas that come to mind?
Herefordshire, it's a different kind of fun.
Yeah, Hereford sounds fun. So Winchester is getting quite a lot of airtime at the moment. People are really sort of, some good restaurants have opened up. It's a really good commute time. So that what I'd say is you get further west, places like Hungerford, less of a kind of huge buzz, but they're really, really popular. Marlborough, they're really nice, sort of buzzy. They're more like small towns rather than big villages, but that tends to attract a good crowd.
Or even think places like Henley, I would say.
Exactly,
It's kind of those places that kind of have, then they might have festivals, mightn't they? Or they've got a life, they've got a tourist life actually, beyond a kind of the local life. That's another good one to think about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi. I enjoyed the debate about whether it's 25 or 45 minutes, but if you sent your child to full boarding, what's a suitable time to travel then? Because you think you don't have to be that close to the school anymore.
So funnily enough, I've got a year 6 son, so we're going through exactly this process at the moment with our ISCBs and looking at boarding schools, and we've given ourselves, and I don't know whether you'd agree, an hour, because we think if you're wanting to support them by watching matches, or if you're wanting to go and see them doing a performance, it's an hour feels like the maximum that we would want to travel. I'm sure there are parents who do much further.
I think you're right. I mean, so both at Caterham and in fact my former school, Tunbridge, an hour was pretty much the limit. As you say, is that you as a parent can get to a school to watch a performance, a play, a music concert, or a fixture. Much further than that, then actually you're buying into a different boarding experience as a family. And I think increasingly that's what's happening, that whereas perhaps once upon a time you were buying the experience for your child, now increasingly we find it's the family buying the experience, and the family want to be involved in the boarding experience. So much more than an hour, that changes, I think, your experience as a parent of that offer.
Fabulous. Yes, there's another question here in the front.
Hi. I wanted to ask about rental versus purchasing a house, and if you had any advice on that with relocating.
That's a great question.
It's a really, really good question. Rentals are, funnily enough, few and far between in the country, good rentals. The only thing I would say is be really specific about your area when you rent, because you'll commit to a community, you'll commit to making friends, you'll commit to a school run. What you don't want to do is rent and then decide you want to buy somewhere else. So I'd be really sure about where you want to be. We say to our clients, it does give you a really good opportunity to sell up in London, to give it a little bit of a taster, but also put yourself in a really good buying position when you come out to the country. So you're chain free, you're good to go, you're a good buyer.
Or do what I did. I actually rented and kept my place in London just in case I was just like, oh my God, I'm not going to like it. So it works out. It was fine.
That's what we were thinking.
Yeah.
Can I say, whilst you pass the microphone, that's my experiences. We've seen that with a number of families. They want to come to the area, they want to come to the school, and they rent, so they're in that position. They've got the flexibility to move when they have to, and when the right property comes up. It's quite common.
Right, any more questions?
Thank you, guys. A quick question for you guys. For working parents living in London that are maybe looking at moving outside, relocating, how do you help them with balancing the choosing the school, but then being able to keep with their careers and commuting into London and all of this thing about, the distance to school and, being able to commute and be back on time. What are the common challenges that you help parents, overcome,
Can I just say, I think every family's got their individual pushes and pulls. You may have a support network in an area. You may know you need to go to a particular airport or a particular office on a particular train line on a regular occurrence or not. So I think some of these other factors, have to be factored in. And yeah, it's just there are multiple issues around that. But when you have the boarding schools, as Ceri quite rightly saying, those flexibilities kind of currently exist because we want the parents to be part of the community at your convenience. Yeah.
I think it's about prioritizing your needs too. What is important? Is a commute time important to you? Do you need to be in the office 5 days a week? In which case, you really need to be 10, 15 minutes to a train station. Is the school important to you too? So therefore, you're putting the train and the school quite close to each other. Suddenly, your where you want to be is suddenly really forming. And I wouldn't give yourself too much of a broad area to look to. Some of the most sort of effective searches are the smaller ones, where you really know the kind of area you want to be to, and you can really drill down. That from our experience is there. But prioritizing your wish list with a little bit of compromise is really a good way of doing it.
No? We've gone over our time, but sod it, we're going to have another question. They'll have to chuck us off the stage.
Is there an ideal age for children to be moving out of the city?
Well, I think there's probably an ideal age not to move out of the city. I think that most of us as schools now are really good at helping your children and you as families settle in an area. So I'm sure the same for you, that part of our sort of admissions process or the admissions pipeline isn't just about recruiting a child, it's also about recruiting a family, and that you are part of that induction process, and we will set you up with conversations with existing families at the school before you arrive so that you are building your network before you come. So whilst, yes, most of us in senior schools will take 11, 13, 16, there are always reasons for families to move in between those points, and schools these days, I think, are really, really good, in my experience, of helping you as a family make that transition, not just your child.
They're always going to be enforced moves for whatever reason, a sudden promotion, a sudden job change. You're quite right. We get children start midweek, mid-term. Obviously, at a younger age, they're far more flexible. Once they've embarked upon a GCSE course or an A-level or an IB course, it becomes more challenging. I mean, children are remarkably resilient and adaptable, so there are ideal times. You do also want to have the conversation with the children, I think, about the excitement of moving. Because of my job, we had to relocate from a fantastic school in Sussex that my children loved. Why do we have to move to Herefordshire? Well, I'm very sorry, that's part of my job, and you're coming with me, because I actually quite like you. Second day, at the end of the first taster day, they wanted to start the next day, and I think it's important to get the children on board with the concept of the move. They are resilient, but yes, if you have the choice, avoid those critical exam year groups, because you don't want to put undue stress or pressure on a child.
In terms of fitting in and family and moving the whole family, I'd say, looking over clients over the last 10 years we've been doing this, the families with the younger children have adapted to country life much quicker than the ones that are away at boarding school, or the ones that are, it's so much easier almost to make friends when you've got young children, because you've automatically got lots in common. The nurseries are really sociable, and you sort of grow up together. And looking back over the families we've moved out, it's the ones with younger years that have settled much, much quicker.
I've had somebody going like this at me, so I think that's the end of it. But thank you so much for your company. Obviously, if any of you got any questions, you can come direct and speak to Andy, Catherine and Ceri. Thank you all very much, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.